Greetings. We continue today in the study of the sovereign will of God and the free moral agency of man. Is there conflict? We're in the section now where we're looking at translations of passages that are commonly used to be twisted around to allegedly support doctrines of Calvinism or Arminius. And we're just simply looking at what the scriptures say and then letting us understand through the Spirit's guidance what that means for us today. We'll begin in Romans chapter 9 and verse 11, where there's a discussion about the children of Isaac and Rebekah. Of course, we know from the book of Genesis they had two sons, twins, Jacob and Esau, and all the background story there, if you want to look at it, and that would be beneficial to understanding this passage. He says, for the not yet having been born, that is children, having done neither any good thing or any bad thing, in order that the election, according to the purpose of the God, it might be remaining. Not out from within works, but out from within the one calling. So very literally, we would break verse 11 down this way. For the children, that's the people being discussed in verse 8, not yet having been born, not even having done a good thing or a bad thing, in order that the purpose of the God it may be remaining according to election, not out from within works, but out from within the one calling. Now, we've got some notes here. I'll just put them out there. You can review as many times as you need to get them. Romans 9 verses 10 through 13 are one complete sentence, one complete thought. It is compound, complex, as we call it in English. Therefore, the whole sentence must be considered as the sum of the parts. And the emphasis here is on what God told Rebekah when she conceived. God said something about Jacob and Esau. He told it to the prospective mother when she conceived the twins before they'd ever been born and done anything. She was told she would have twin boys and that the elder son would serve the younger. This election, it says, was based upon foreknowledge and not conversely, as some teach. God knew the number of children that were to be born. God knew that Jacob the younger would be served by the elder Esau. He said this because he knew that Jacob would serve him, and he knew that Esau would despise him. And all this was told by God to their mother before they were born, as it says, before either one of them had done one good thing or one bad thing. One important note on verse 11 concerns the purpose and the election. The purpose of God, in essence, God's purpose is with the article. We call that articular or particular, and it's in the nominative case, making it the subject of this subordinate clause. While on the other hand, according to election does not have an article, it's the generic or anarthrous, we commonly call it, is the object of the verb, if you please, it may be remaining, that it might be remaining according to election. Plainly stated is the fact that not eternal predestination of individuals to salvation or reprobation is the issue that is before us. Rather, it is a calling to service based upon God's foreknowledge of what their works would be. Election, not out from within works, but out from within the one calling. So Romans 9:11 defines the works with the aorist tense. That is, at a point when God said to her, there were no works done to make the distinction upon. However, the one calling knew what the works would be, and based upon his foreknowledge, it was said to her, and verse 12 tells us what was said. It was said to her that the elder one he shall serve to the younger one. It's a very simple, very short statement. What did God say to her? He said to her that the elder son would serve the younger son. The subject here is it, and the verb is was said. The object is what was said. The answer to that question is that the elder one would serve the younger one. And the indirect object there is to whom did he say this, and that's to her. So we go directly then to verse 13. As it has been written, the Jacob he loved, but the Esau he hated, or we will say loved less, and we'll explain that now. So literally it simply says, as it has been written, the Jacob he loved, but the Esau he hated, or comparatively he loved less. We're doing comparison of two things. Note, Paul quotes Malachi 1:2 and verse 7 when he says this. And this language sounds a bit hard to us, but we should remember it's possible that miseu did not always carry the full force of what we mean by hate. If you look to Matthew 6:24, you'll see that these very words, agapeo, that he used for Jacob, and miseo, that he used for Esau, are contrasted. So also in Luke chapter 14 and verse 26 about hating one's father and mother if they're coming between their service between a person and Christ. So in John 12:25 about hating one's own life. This has something to do with the breaking of the first commandment. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. And we can put other people in God's place if we're not very careful. We're supposed to love him with all our whole heart, soul, mind, and strength. And if someone else takes that place, then this issue of loving them less, or quote, hating them, comes into play. There's no doubt upon God's preference for Jacob and his rejection of Esau. But in spite of Sandy, this is a quote, and Headlam, one hesitates to read into these words here the intense hatred that has always existed between the descendants of Jacob and Esau. That's Robertson, page 382. Another quote, the signification to love less, or to postpone in love or esteem, to slight through oversight of the circumstance that the Orientals, in accordance with their greater excitability, are wont both to feel and to profess love and hate, where we Occidentals, with our cooler temperament, feel and express nothing more than interest in or disregard and indifference to a thing. End quote. That's Thayer, page 415. The adverb as is not a comparative adverb. It is modifying, it is written. And what had been written is comparative in itself. And we should note that both love and hate are in the aorist tense. At a point, God loved Jacob more than Esau. At a point, God loved Esau less. So he uses the word hate than Jacob. If this is eternal predestination to salvation, then the perfect tense should have been used, where the action is viewed as complete in past time with continuing results. But he didn't use that. The Holy Spirit inspired the aorist tense, which means at a point. So Romans 9:12 is prophetic based upon God's foreknowledge and fulfilled at a point in time in the life of these young men. So we leave verse 13 then and go to verse 15. To the Moses, for to the Moses he is saying, I will show mercy to whom I may be showing mercy, and I will pity to whom I may or should be pitying. So this is God's statement very simply to him. He says, to Moses he's saying, I will show mercy to whom I may be showing mercy, and I will show pity to whom I may be pitying. There are two tenses used in this verse. The present tense, which is continuous and repeated action in present time, and the future tense, which is continuous and repeated action in future time. Thus God is saying that his mercy and pity will continue in the future upon those upon whom it may or should be presently abiding. Therefore, security and not salvation is what is under consideration. Let me quote here. Eliu, to show mercy, and oiktero, to pity. The first of these words expresses the compassion of the heart. The second, the manifestation of that feeling. That's linguistic key, page 369, and we end that quote. So Paul quotes here Deuteronomy 33:19, and in its context, Pharaoh is not in view, as most people want to take it, as he drowned back in Exodus chapter 14 and verse 28. Here Moses asked to see God's glory, according to Exodus 33:18. This is a believer seeking the supplying of his need in service. That's the accurate context. He's already been delivered from Egypt. He's in the tabernacle outside of the camp, talking face to face with God, according to verses 9 and 11. For Moses is known by name to God. Verses 12 and 17 say Moses is seeking the presence of God for service. That's verse 15. So God is saying to Moses, I will be showing mercy to whom I may be showing mercy, and I will pity whom I am pitying. And then finally we look to verse 23. In order that he may make known the wealth of his glory upon vessels of mercy, which he before ordained unto glory. And in order that he may make known the wealth of his particular glory upon these generic vessels of mercy, which he ordained beforehand unto glory. Again, the subject is he, God. The main verb is he ordained beforehand. What did he before ordain? Which vessels unto glory. And the subordinate clause expressing the purpose is, in order that he make known the wealth of his particular glory upon these anarthrous vessels of mercy. So the predestination in this verse does not deal with who will be the vessels of mercy, but what will be done with those vessels of mercy, that is, God bringing them unto glory. And the vessels of mercy being anarthrous emphasizes the character or essence of something suited to receive and hold mercy, as opposed to saying that he particularly selected this vessel and rejected that particular vessel just on any particular caprice that he might have within the sphere of his will.